G'day guys, I'm Chris Dore, and today's lockdown lesson is simply how to throw a higher back cast. Now, the common misconception is that if you lift your arm up high and cast back and forth, then you're throwing a high back cast, but this isn't so. Remember back to our very first lockdown lesson, where one of the key points was that the line will follow the path of the rod tip. Now listen to this. If I'm casting out like this and I'm hooking the rocks behind me, or hooking this stuff behind me, first thing people are going to do is lift their arm up and cast like this. And in fact, they're probably throwing a lower back cast. That line follows the path of the rod tip. My hand's travelling a steep path like this, but it's not actually that steep. It's more sort of parallel to the ground than it is up and down. Now if I go back to my initial pantomime technique, keep my elbow and hands down relaxed by my side, create the point with my finger of the rod tip, lift, 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 snap, tap and drop. Back cast, forward cast and follow through. You notice that my hand's travelling a very steep path there, up, down and follow through, which means my back cast is going to travel high and up off the rod tip, as long as my hand doesn't deviate from that line and rotate back too far and ultimately send my cast downwards. Now, the moment the line leaves the rod tip, gravity comes into play and starts pulling that loop down towards the ground. And that's why I often refer them to upcast rather than backcast in beginner clinics. It's more noticeable on longer distance casts where your line's got more time to turn over and more time to drop. And you notice that if you're sending your cast straight behind you, your line falls, and you notice you're either ticking the rocks, catching the debris behind you, or your forward cast travels up high into the sky and puddles back down at your feet. Now, let's have a look at this in real time. So as you can see, by sticking to those fundamentals, the foundation casting stroke that you learnt in lesson 1, then you can throw a higher back cast without changing anything. Just remember, if that elbow stays low, your hand travels upwards in a steep path. That steep path is going to send that line up and behind you. Now, what is the difference between casting a steep path and a steeper path? It's easy. Instead of casting like that, simply tuck your elbow backwards. As you lift into your back cast, your hand's now travelling a much steeper path than it was a moment ago. That's how you throw a steeple cast or a very high back cast above an encroaching rear object. Now, one thing to remember is that the higher your back cast, the lower your forward cast must be, as your rod tip must travel in a nice straight line path to avoid tailing that loop. Hey, I'm Chris Dore, and that's how to throw a higher back cast. Cheers.